Well guys, that's what these test drives are for. This LT1 and 8-speed ran awesome on the trail, but we broke the ram off. It wasn't secure very well on the axle housing, but that's what we're out there for. Hi guys, sorry I forgot the GoPro, so I'm on my phone. Here we are out in beautiful Red Rock with this late model Jeep with an LT1 8-speed. What could be better? This Jeep has got some character. This is the kind of Jeep I like to do builds on. He's got metal cloak game changer suspension, 6-pack shocks, but you can see that this Jeep has been used. This Jeep has got the road rash from actually going off-road and doing things. A lot of the Jeeps that we do never see dirt. That's pretty cool. Look, you can see the E92 right through the vent. Since I've been in high school, I've been off-roading. I was in the Toyotas and the early CJs, and I've always used my Jeep to get out into nature. It's kind of a freedom for me, and I think a lot of people are discovering that now. Now, yeah, there's been a lot of mainstream Jeepers for a lot of years, but now with what's going on in the world, riots and viruses and everything else, guys just want to get out into nature, and what better vehicle to do it in than a Wrangler? There are a lot of other vehicles that you can do it in, pickup trucks and Range Rovers and all that, but none of them really do it like the Wrangler does it. Wranglers used to be affordable. I paid $32,000 for my Rubicon, which had pretty much every option in 2009. Today you could spend double that on a Rubicon. This is the Jeep we did the initial test drive in a while ago, and now we're taking it to the mountain. This Jeep also has a Atlas 2-speed, and I still get a lot of questions. I just had a customer do an LT1 build with me, or we're doing the LT1 build in-house, and we ordered some axles from Dynatrac, and Steve Maroney called me from Dynatrac and said, hey, bud, we only offer the 488 in these packages. And he's like, why would you want to go below 488? This guy's got 35-inch tires. And I explained to him, and he understood that, yeah, with a V6, I got guys with 37s and 538s, which is crazy. And with 35s, a lot of guys are running 538s, 513s. But you got to remember, these Jeep transmissions have a 2.8, 3.0 first gear. The 10-speed has a 4.7 first gear. That is a massive difference. And then when you consider the LT has massive gobs of torque, under 2,000 RPM, probably putting out more torque than the V6s put out anywhere. And you don't want to run those short gears. So I convinced Steve to go into the back shop and convince his engineers to make some axles with taller gears. In fact, we've done about, I'm going to say 6 set of axles just in the last couple of months with Dynatrac. We've done the 44s, the 60s, the 80s, and of course we've done other brands, the Fusions and Curries. Manufacturers have to start considering these powerful V8s and the fact that they need to be geared differently. So here we have a relatively heavy Jeep, and we know this guy wheels. And what's nice about this Jeep, even though he wheels this Jeep and he uses this Jeep, now I've never been out wheeling with this guy and I really don't know where he goes, but I can tell just by sitting in this Jeep and driving this Jeep, it is driven hard, but it is also well taken care of. And there's a big difference between that and thrashing your Jeep and putting it away. This guy takes care of his equipment. So this guy's probably going to make his annual trips to Moab, Rubicon, Fordyce, wherever he goes, and have fun. He wants to drive it there on the highway. And the beautiful thing about this LT, you can cruise down the highway at under 2,000 RPM at 70 miles an hour, but then when you get off-road, you still have that torque of this direct injected V8 and the low gearing of the 8 and the 10-speed transmission. And it changes the transfer case gearing also. Guys are still requesting 3.8, 4.3, 5-to-1 Atlases, and it really doesn't make any sense. An LT with a 3-to-1 low ratio has steeper gears than a stock Rubicon. And with the torque of the LT, you can go up most hills and high, let alone switch into four-wheel drive. Four-wheel drive in an LT is really useful when you're going down steep hills, you need compression braking, or you just want to throw the thing and drive and idle up a hill. But when you guys see me on these trails, going up some of these steep grades, I'm in high most of the time because of the torque of the V8 and the low gearing of these high gear transmissions. So my gearing recommendations, while still similar to the past, have changed a little bit with these LTs. I have run 373s in JKs with 37s and LT 8 speeds, and it works just fine. Yes, it does kick down into 7th gear, maybe sometimes 6th gear in the highway, but just driving it around, you still have a lot of power, more power than the V6 ever had. And then when you get on the highway, you're cruising at really low RPM. 410s or 456s would probably make a better choice. And here's the speech I give my customers almost on a daily basis when they ask me about gearing. Obviously, you have to determine what engine you have, the weight of your Jeep, the tire size, etc. Secondly, where are you at? If you're at Durango, Colorado at 6,000 to 8,000 feet versus sea level in Oklahoma, that's a different need. So here's some general gearing recommendations. Now, I've done several videos on gearing and LSs, so we're just going to talk about the LTs. And there's going to be two categories of LT, the 5.3 and the 6.2. We're not going to talk about the supercharged LTs. We're not going to talk about the 6-cylinder LTs. If we look at the LT 5.3, 35-inch tire, 410s work great. It's a great all-around gear, meaning it's good for on-highway and off-highway. It's going to put you about 2,000 RPM at 70. It's going to have a lot of pulling power on the bottom end, and it's going to cruise nice on the highway. You have to consider that if you're going to tow a trailer, if you're going to go to high altitude, if your Jeep is excessively heavy, you have campers, roof racks, steel bumpers, steel skid plates, and all that, step up a gear. Go to 456s. On the flip side, if your Jeep is really light, it's a two-door. You live at low altitude. It's under a lighter load. Drop down a gear. Go to 373s. When we step up to the 6.2 LT with the massive torque they have, you might want to shy towards the taller gear. It's rare, guys, you're ever going to be lacking power with a 6.2 LT, regardless of the gearing you have. It's not like a V6 where you're just going to run out of power. And when you have 8 or 10 gears to choose from, there's usually a gear that's going to work for you. The one caveat would be if you got 40s, 42s, your Jeep is really heavy, you don't want to go to a 373 gear because you got to launch that thing out of the hole. So with 40s, 488s will work as a highway gear. 513s is a great all-around gear. And 538s, if you don't go on the highway a lot, your Jeep is really heavy, you tow, etc. Now, when it comes to the transfer case, that's really more subjective. What do you do? If you crawl at Moab and you don't go more than 5 miles an hour in four-wheel drive low, then go for a shorter ratio. Get a 20-to-1 overall ratio. Remember, if you go with a 4.3 Atlas and you've got a 4.6 or 4.7 8L90 or a 10L80, you're close to 20-to-1. A stock Rubicon is 11 to 12 to 1. What you don't want to do is get a 5-to-1 ratio, hit a hunting trail, or you're trying to get wheel speed up in mud, sand, or snow, and you just don't have the wheel speed because you got a 5-to-1 ratio, engine's revving up, and you're not going anywhere. That's where the 3-to-1 Atlas comes into play. Now, we've been working with Advance for many, many years, especially Steve Roberts, and here's our recommendations on the Atlas. For pretty much all general use, just go with a 3-to-1. Doesn't matter what transmission you have. The 6, 8, and 10-speed transmissions have diverse enough gearing to make the 3.1 work in most situations. That includes just cruising trails, hill climbing. And remember, guys, when you go to an LT, you're not going to be in four-wheel drive low as much as you were before. You're going to be in four-wheel drive high and use the torque of that engine to move you along. In situations like sand, where you need to really spin those wheels up and get on top of the sand, you're going to want to stay in high range and then use the torque of that engine to sail along. If you gear too low, you go to a 5-to-1 Atlas, then it's going to be difficult to keep that wheel speed up. The LTs have really changed the game. They brought to the table this massive torque on the bottom end, similar to a diesel. So now the heavy Jeeps really aren't a consideration anymore. When you had a V6 and you put a turbocharger, supercharger, you geared it, you did everything you could do to move that weight down the road. But the LT does it with ease because of its technology and its displacement. Even the LSs and the Hemis can't rival the LT when it comes to the torque output. Yes, they put a lot of horsepower out, but they put that power out on the top end where the LT puts it out on the bottom end. So now we have to do what the manufacturers are doing, and that is gear tall. I'm seeing gear ratios in the 3-to-1, even less than 3-to-1, 270s in some of these new production vehicles. Even my wife's Pacifica with a 9-speed is rarely in 9th gear, and they're getting maximum use out of that gear diversity and dropping that engine RPM down when it's not under a load. In addition, the high gear transmissions allow the engine to more efficiently work in its power band. The LTs with CVVT even take that to a new level. So I'm going to quickly go over this Atlas one more time. Guys say, why do I want a twin stick Atlas? You get more modes. You get two-wheel drive low. You get front-wheel drive. Now, I'm not going to list all the situations that the Atlas can come into play, but it's safe to say if you want to be in low range, but you don't want to be in four-wheel drive because you're running a trail with a lot of switchbacks, the Atlas is going to work better than a 241. If you want front-wheel drive in the snow, you can engage that front axle and not engage the rear. The Atlas is better than a 241. If you're doing technical rock climbing, where you have to separate the axles, the Atlas is going to be better than a 241. Now, 98% of the time, for most of us, you're never going to be in a situation like that. So the 241 does the job. That's a decision you have to make. Now, lately, I've been getting a lot of videos from my customers with LTs off-road. And I'm not talking about just running trails. They're running some really technical stuff. I'll try to post a few videos up, but the feedback I'm getting from these guys is these LTs are really monsters on the trail. With the torque that they have, a lot of the issues with throttle control of the past are over. The ability to climb a waterfall with just light throttle, not revving the motor up, keeping the wheel speed consistent, has advantages. And again, when you match that with an 8 or a 10 speed, it means the engine is where it wants to be. So when you work the throttle, you have more accurate power delivery to the wheels. So we're gonna hit the trail on this 8-speed LT1 JK, and we will be back soon.